cat lovers! Welcome to Meow Academy. Today, we are going to have a little bit of a different video. We're going to have a guest speaker today. Because working with cats over the years, especially I think working out from Dublin, there are a lot of workers who might be coming in from another country or flying out to another country after the contracts and so on. And so I end up getting to know Kevin very well. Kevin is an international pet travel expert. He works out from Dublin Airport. So I decided to invite him to come to speak with us today. He's going to debunk all the urban myth and clear confusions and maybe also answer some of your questions as well. So check this out. So we are very happy today to have Kevin, who is a pet international travel expert, going to talk to us today on this channel. So Kevin, thank you very much for your time.
Nice to meet you again, Alice. Good to speak to you.
So you are an international pet transportation expert. So what does it mean? How did you come about doing this job? And tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, we've been doing it for over 25 years, Alice. It's a relatively small market here in Ireland, but we consider ourselves specialists at this. Nobody can really train you for it. You've got to go through every single step, learn all the hard lessons along the way, and we've certainly done that. We've built up a high level of expertise in the movement of live animals, particularly by international air freight. So it's basically what we do. It makes up 90 to 95% of our business here. We also supply crates and other equipment that people may need in order to relocate their pet somewhere outside of Ireland. And we provide on-site services at Dublin Airport for people traveling with their pets. We also have connections with the Department of Agriculture. We're a company that's approved by the Irish Department of Agriculture here. We're also approved by all the major airlines here and seen and noted for our expertise in this particular area. Airlines would regularly put contacts in touch with us to make their bookings and look after the pets, etc. So yeah, it's a different business than most people, but we really enjoy it. If we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't be doing it. A small side of our business that's developing now is that we're operating a small kennels. It's really to facilitate the overnights of pets. Sometimes people are traveling, flights depart at early hours in the morning, 7 o'clock or whatever. Pet's got to be at the airport at 4 o'clock. We provide that service, but it may be more compatible for the client to travel the evening before. We will overnight a pet and we'll personally bring it to Dublin Airport from the kennel facility that we're now operating. So we're expanding to some degree in a difficult market and at a difficult time, but we enjoy it.
Great. Well, that sounds fabulous. And I know personally, of you taking care of some of my clients relocating, that you are a genuine pet lovers and you do, you do take good care of the animal as if they are your own during the time that they are under your custody. So, yeah.
You could not do this job unless you liked animals. You could not do this job well unless you loved animals. You just couldn't do it.
That's very reassuring to know.
Yeah,
so one of the top questions I get from gathering all the questions from people around me over the years is that people often have these perceptions that traveling with animal internationally is very difficult. So obviously I know different countries depending on the regulations and so on, but from your experience, is this something that is so difficult that people completely put off doing that, and they should rehome the animal, and what do you recommend people doing?
Yeah, I think it does put people off. I think in their head they have this preset idea of what's going to happen to their pet, but yet they have no experience of it. And in some cases, they haven't really talked to a professional in relation to it. Like anything in life, first of all, you get some professional advice and then you make your decisions from there. There are pets moving all over the world every day of the week, 7 days a week to most countries. Some of the major airlines carry a huge amount of pets. It's a huge part of their business. We are part of an organization called IPATA, which is an international organization for international pet shippers. They are applying more and more standards to their members. They're also acting as a pressure group onto the airlines to make sure their airline services are up to date. that they're effective, that they're efficient, and so on. So it really is a growing business, and more people are flying with pets now. But I do understand people's apprehension. And part of our job is to take that apprehension out of that trip in advance of them making the booking. But never be afraid to make the inquiry. We'll be honest with you.
I see. So is it generally durable to travel internationally, or obviously depending on the country, right?
Yeah, no, it's very doable, and there's an explosion in the airline prior to COVID. Anyway, there was an explosion in the air freight business. That there's more and more operators in the sky. There's more and more services available. If I just take our own country, for instance, 5 or 6 years ago, Aer Lingus might have had 4 or 5 direct destinations you could fly to in the USA, for example. Now they have 12, 13, 14. So that'll show you the difference in expansion of their direct services. And everybody that can will always put their pet onto one flight to a direct destination, then have to go via somewhere else to get somewhere else. So services are improving. It's becoming a bit easier. The more services that's there, generally speaking, it tends to bring the cost down a little bit. So it's all pointing in the right direction. And once we get past this COVID issue, hopefully we can push on from there.
Right. So you basically your suggestion is don't get put off by the idea. People should start to do the research on contact professionals and then take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Do the research before you make a decision. Everybody will start off being apprehensive, and hopefully it's people like me that can point you in the direction and take some of that apprehension out of the situation. But do the research first before you make a decision. Take advice from somebody that's in this business. Take advice from professional vets. Take advice from departments of agriculture. They come across these things all the time. They're experts in what they do. So don't be put off. Make the inquiry. If you feel good about it, then if you feel reassured, maybe that will encourage you to go ahead and make that move with your pet.
I see. That's very good advice, actually. So we have a couple of questions from people in relation to traveling with their pets internationally. So I figure it would be a good idea for us to do this video, so to clear all the doubts and confusions once and for all from the expert like you, and so that people don't have to poke around on the internet and look at all this information could potentially be outdated. So let's do this. So the common questions I get most is it possible to move your animal internationally? What's the story?
So if you're coming from the Far East or specifically from Hong Kong, yes, it's possible. There may be 1 or 2 different modes that you can use. So one of them is in terms of bringing your pet to the passenger system as a passenger yourself. The people that determine that is the airline that you're traveling with. There is very few airlines entering Ireland that allow you to bring your pet in through the passenger system. Of the ones that do, KLM would be a specific one that allow it. And they're probably the only one operating from the Far East that allow you to transit with your pet through the passenger system. Now, even in doing that, it's still subject to all the necessary rules and regulations that apply to importing pets into Ireland. But it is possible through the cargo system, whereby you do not have to be on the same flight or take the same trip as your pet. You can use the services of a professional pet relocation company, either in Ireland or in Hong Kong, and they will look up the various airlines arriving into Dublin and advise you what the best option is. Generally speaking, I would favour somebody like Lufthansa Airlines, simply because they've got very good services out of the Far East and Asia. They've got an extremely good facility at Frankfurt Airport for the stopover, overnighting, and documentation of pets as they arrive through. So that's my personal preference. But there is other options. You can come in via London. I don't like it because it's a little bit of a congested airport, but it can be used. KLM Airlines via Amsterdam is another option. So they're the main 3 serving this market coming from your area.
Great. So, but is it complicated? Because I feel like a lot of people are kind of overwhelmed by the idea, and they have this assumption that it's a complicated procedure and they're freaked out. So is it complicated?
Yeah, look, I understand the question totally. And it is complicated from an outsider looking in, or it certainly appears that way. And in my experience, the more you go on the internet, the more complicated it becomes. There's misinformation, there's out-of-date information, there's incorrect information. But once somebody points you in the right direction from the very start, it shouldn't be a complicated process. There's a preset list of what the requirements are to import your pet into Ireland, and they're very straightforward and easy accessible directly from the Irish Department of Agriculture website, which I can give you the link for. And also, airlines have specific rules in relation to carrying live animals. Once you solve those two areas, engage the services of a pet relocation company, it shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be difficult. And part of our job is to take the stress out of the situation for the client and most importantly for their pets.
So do people have to use an agent, or that's another common question. They are wondering if they can DIY, or is it do they have to use an agent?
In some cases you have to, because it depends on the animal and so on. It depends on the origin airport, and it depends on the airline that you use. So some airlines will just simply not allow you to take it through the passenger system. Of the ones that do, you are then taking all the risk yourself. So there is nobody checking your documentation or paperwork in advance. You're hoping that everything goes well. There's nobody here advising you what you have to do when you arrive. So you're taking all the risks and responsibility, and quite often for not a huge saving. But it is possible to do it. There's a minimum amount of airlines that will allow you to do it. And it's the airline rather than the country that you're going to that determines whether you can use them through the passenger system or not.
Oh, okay. So it might be worth a while.
It isolates you. You are now responsible for all the information that you get. You're responsible for preparing your pet in the correct manner, ensuring that you've all the right documentation, so that when you get off that flight in Dublin, be it with KLM or whatever airline, that everything belonging to your pet is in order. You are now responsible for that once you're traveling yourself through the passenger system. It's doable. I don't necessarily advise it, but sometimes for financial reasons, people want to do it, and we fully respect that.
I see. And also another common thing that people have is that they want to travel through the passenger system, if some airlines allows, is that they don't want to be separated with their pets. So yeah, I think that's one of the factor. So how do you feel about it?
Well, again, it's an airline that will determine whether you can take your pet into the cabin or not. Obviously, if you have a large pet like a dog or an Alsatian dog or a German Shepherd, he simply doesn't fit in the cabin of an aircraft, so you can take those. So very small pets with some airlines are allowed, and they allow you to place them under the seat. Again, it's the airline that you're using will determine whether you can do that or not. And most airlines will have a section on their website that says traveling with pets or bringing your pet. And it should outline for you on that website what their rules and regulations are for carrying live animals in terms of can they go in the cabin or do they have to be placed in the cargo hold.
And so next questions I have here is, what are the paperwork? Because the people feel very overwhelmed, thinking paperwork is going to be mountains of it. Is it going to be mountains of it?
Not really. Basic paperwork. Most people will have paperwork relating to their pets. So they should have some kind of vaccination record or vaccination record card of what vaccinations your pet has received from the time you have that pet from. So they have that information. They then look at the country they're going to or take advice from a pet relocation company and see what additional vaccinations might be needed. So for example, for Ireland, to import any pet into Ireland, it has to be rabies vaccinated, and that has to be done no younger than 12 weeks of age for a pet. So if you have a pet 8 weeks of age, you must wait until 12 to rabies vaccinate, and then you have to wait a set period of time. And coming from Hong Kong, that set period of time is 3 weeks. So in effect, the youngest you could bring a pet into Ireland is 15 or 16 weeks. So it's not overly complicated. You start off with your vaccination record form that you have for your pet, and then you add in the requirements of the country you're going to. So rabies vaccination will be one, and that will be added to the pet's record, and evidence of that will be kept. Secondly, a dog will have to be, or a cat may have to have a warming treatment within a set space of time before it leaves. Usually that set space of time is between 2 and 5 days of the departure date. So in other words, it has to be very recently warmed, and that's evidenced onto the pet vaccination record. There is some additional documentation. The general word for it is called an annex form. Can only be completed by a vet, qualified vet, under which he will enter all your pet's details from the vaccination record and he'll certify all those details. He will health check your pet and provide certification of that health check. And your vet will be responsible for making sure you have everything that's required onto that form, along with the supporting documentation. So it's relatively straightforward. It's only as complicated as you want to make it.
Oh, I see. So, so I would imagine you would recommend people to start early and not to leave the planning until too late, because you know you have to think ahead of time what you want to do with the logistic, everything. Would you think so?
Correct. Absolutely. The earlier you plan, the better. Give yourself at least 3 months in advance to make a plan to move your pet. Give yourself that set period of time. So it gives you plenty of time to solve any problems or update any vaccinations that your pet doesn't already have or subsequently needs. So yeah, give yourself that 3 month period of time in advance of your trip, in as much as you can. It's not to say that it can't be done closer to your departure date, but the more time you give yourself, the less stressful the situation is.
But I heard it might be outdated information now, but I heard that with the rabies shot, it needs to be 6 months and whatever. So if it is less than 6 months, then the animal need to be quarantined and whatever. Is what's the story with that one?
Well, again, particularly due to the COVID crisis, that a lot of countries are re-looking and revisiting their situation in relation to live animals entering their country, and some of them are adopting different tactics that takes COVID into consideration. And I know, for argument's sake, in Dubai at the moment, your pet, you've got to put your pet into quarantine for 14 days before you can actually enter into Dubai to prove that it's COVID-free, and you have to do it at a registered kennels or probably a state kennels, and before your pet can even travel in there. So over the last couple of months, a number of countries have reacted in different ways and may upgrade and change their rules. At the moment, there's no rule coming from Hong Kong to say that your pet has to be rabies vaccinated for 6 months. 12 weeks could be done at 12 weeks, and then you wait for 3 weeks. Once it's vaccinated for 3 weeks, that's absolutely fine. It's not to say the rules won't change, but we are always updating our system here. And for each individual client, from the time they contact us, we will contact the Department of Agriculture here for any updates that maybe have not been sent out.
And what will happen if people leave it too late? Again, the top one questions I get is people are worried that the animal will end up in quarantine. So what if they leave it too late? Will the animal end up to be in quarantine to make up for the time? Do you know what I mean?
Well, technically speaking, you would never get your pet out of Hong Kong. If a pet arrives into Ireland and it hasn't undergone the necessary checks and measures, doesn't have the rabies vaccination for the length of time it should have, in theory, it shouldn't have come in here. And if it does arrive in here with a problem, it'll be taken into quarantine, and it'll be kept in quarantine until the problem is fixed. So how would you fix that problem? You'd obviously have the rabies done here in Ireland, or you'd wait to run down the amount of days that the pet has left in order to qualify it to be here. So it stays under quarantine conditions. You don't really want that to happen, because quarantine stations tend to be expensive. They have high fees and charges. On average, they would charge you about €25 per night to have your pet in quarantine, but they'll charge you for other services, for applying vaccinations or filling out documentation, additional documentation that will occur because the pet didn't meet the requirements when it arrived to Dublin Airport. Every pet coming from Hong Kong has to pass through the quarantine station, and for arrivals, that's part of our job. We steer it through that process, but it's a process that includes just a check of documentation, a verification of the pet's microchip number, and once things are in order, you're in and out of that quarantine station within a couple of hours.
I see. So, so it's better off that people get themselves organized. Basically, this is the key.
Absolutely, and I think they should get some professional advice specific to the time that they want to travel. There may be rules that don't apply now and may be due to come in 2 months, 3 months' time. Everything is relevant to the date that you want to come here. And I think you should at least start off by some professional advice from a pet relocation company, either ourselves, somebody else here in Ireland, or somebody in Hong Kong. Start there, even if you intend to bring the pet with you yourself. We quite often advise people, even though we're not actually moving their pet for them, we've no problem giving them out updated information or updated advice if they need it.
I see. So now I've heard another horror story, horrible information on the internet, but there are all sorts of information on the internet. I feel like, this is a good opportunity to clear that out, because there are all these horror stories on the internet saying that if your animal doesn't meet the requirement, it will be put to sleep and things like that. Does that happen or not at all?
I have never come across that happening. What I have come across is that certain countries will make a statement, and particularly again at the moment during COVID, one of the problems with COVID is that there's much less aircraft in the sky. So if your pet arrives into Frankfurt, for argument's sake, and in a normal situation there would be 4 flights a day from Frankfurt to Dublin. So if it didn't make its first connection, it'll go on the next flight, or even the next flight later that day, arrives in the same day. At the moment, because the airlines are working off, in general, off about 25 to 30% of their normal schedule, your pet will be left there for 2 or 3 days. And because the airlines don't want that, they don't want that responsibility for that length of time, particularly during the current crisis, they have the option to return the pet, and most countries have this. They return the pet to where it started from. In other words, if it doesn't meet the requirements, they'll put it on the next flight they can get back to Hong Kong and transfer the problem back to the starting point. Generally, that doesn't happen, and generally, pets are not put to sleep without a very, very good reason. So, if you've got your dates wrong, if your rabies not up to date, they're fixable problems, and there's no reason why this should end in a dog or cat being put to sleep. So no, I haven't come across that physically happening, but I have come across countries who have returned pets back to their origin because things weren't in order. Again, it's not endemic of the business, but it does happen, and some countries are strict on it, and they will do it.
Okay, so this put to sleep thing is just internet scary rumor thing.
No, I think there was a very famous story about a very famous actor that went to Australia. I don't want to mention their names, but they arrived to Australia a couple of years ago on a private plane, and they had two pets. And whatever they done, they simply went into Australia, which is very strict on the import of live animals from anywhere other than New Zealand, and got off their private plane and went on holiday for the next couple of weeks. But because they were so famous, they appeared on a lot of Facebook and internet and social media, and people became aware that they were in the country with the dogs, and the authorities became aware that those dogs underwent no checks when they went in there. So they were asked to make themselves available and come forward. And actually, I think it was the Minister for Agriculture or whatever in Australia had threatened to have the dogs euthanized if they didn't comply. It never happened. I know the pets returned safely to the USA in the end. But so the most important thing, if you do things right, these things shouldn't be an issue.
I see. So so this is another very common question. I think people are very concerned. So, okay, you give the animal to the people in the airport, and then they go through the cargo system, for example. What will happen to them? They are freaked out that what is going to happen to the animal? Are they going to be scared? And will people be nice to them? What's the story?
So part of our job is that every animal we send out of Ireland, or for that matter, bring in, so we would attend at the airport. So the first thing is you have a professional person that's trained in the handling of live animals on site at the airport to meet you. And generally, as a rule, we would try to separate the owner of the pet from the pet as soon as possible. Once your pet is in a crate and you're standing outside, generally they want to get out. We see a difference between cats and dogs. A dog will go to the front of the cage and try and fight his way out, or a cat will probably go to the back, roll up in a ball, cover itself in its bedding, and just get so nervous. But we find that when we separate the client from the pet, we get a little bit of control over the pet to some degree. We start to get it to calm down, and we don't check in pets till we have them at that point where they're calmed down, that they're reasonably satisfied as to where they are and why they're there. And so as professionals, we would look after the process of checking your pet into the airline through that airline system, which involves a pet undergoing an X-ray while it's in the crate, which involves a check from the airline making sure that all the documentation is in order, that the crate being used for the pet is in order, that it's fully sealed, it's secured, it's fully labeled, and that also, most importantly, that the pet that's inside the crate is in good order and fit to travel. So there's two different people. There's ourselves and the airline doing that double check system on a pet being checked in. So once we remove the client, we take the stress away from the client. It's the client that's stressed, not the pet. So you take the client away, you're left with a pet that's happy.
I see. So, so from your experience, the animals are reasonably happy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you will get pets. You have options in advance. If your pet has not been inside a crate before, it's a good idea to get your crate 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. Get them used to staying in the crate. Close the door. Leave them in it overnight. Gradually, over a period of days, you'll see a difference. So, put their normal bedding that they use inside the crate, so it has their scent, their smell on it. They become comfortable with being in the crate, rather than just appearing at the airport. Um, Taking a crate from a pet relocation company like yourself, putting your pet into it and hoping that they like it. You can solve that problem. You can take some of that stress by having the crate in advance, and that takes some of the worry out of it for you. So there's little things you can do to help yourself.
It's going
And help
back to preparation again.
you.
And so another thing, another common questions I get here is that people are asking, so what happened after that then? The cargo handler, are they going to toss the animal around, or are the animal going to be nicely put on the cargo hold, or are they with the luggages? And what if they freaked out? Like, that's another common questions people have, because we can't see behind the scene. We don't know
No,
actually
of course.
what happened to the animal afterwards.
And to be totally honest with you, we can't see behind the scenes either. We take your pet to a certain point within that cargo building, right into their warehouse. And from that point, it becomes the airline's responsibility to transfer that pet from that warehouse to the aircraft side, ultimately to be loaded. First of all, pets aren't loaded with luggage. Any airline that's carrying live animals through the cargo system must have, by rule, law, and legislation, a separate compartment. That's number one, it's a pressurized cabin. Number two, the temperature in that cabin should be controllable. So they should be able to determine exactly what settings should be put in that particular part of the cargo hold of the aircraft, but it would be specific for pets. Number three, that also any pet that's in the crate must be physically secured inside that cargo hold of the aircraft. And they use a strapping mechanism to do that. So it's not just your cat in a crate placed on an aircraft and hope it stays in place. It's fully secured down. There's other things they must do is make sure that when they secure that crate, that nothing else is put around the crate. So there isn't another crate put right beside it, or a big pallet, or anything else. So there's room for the air to circulate completely through that crate to keep your pet at a constant temperature over the course of the journey. I will also say as well that any airlines, again, that accept pets through the cargo system, they must provide information and confirmation that their staff are fully trained in the handling of pets, pet crates, loading of aircraft, etc. So it's something that's not taken lightly, and people will know from inquiring in relation to costs and charges with airlines. Some people think this is really expensive. But what you're paying for is the expertise, not just of the broker that's preparing it for you, but you're paying for the expertise that the airline provide for this. It's not handled like baggage. It's not to say nobody ever handled a pet crate like that, but generally speaking, that's not the case. It should be handled in a professional manner. That's what you're paying for, and that's what you should expect.
I see. So will there be other animals? Because that's another big worry people have, is that what if my animal scare off other animal? Then say, what's the story with that?
Okay. Well, first of all, when you book your pet, you're not booking the plane just for your pet. Hey, you're booking a space on it for it. Quite often there would be other animals on a flight, but usually they'd look at the compatibility of saying, if they can see that there's a dog on this flight and it's scaring the cat, or vice versa, which is sometimes the case, they will separate them within the cargo hold in as much as the space will allow them to do that. But generally speaking, I don't think it's an issue, because I quite often see a lot of pets at the airport arriving, coming in, being in warehouses for a period of time. And once they know that there's no threat to them, and they're sort of they're happy with the security that the crate gives them, they seem to settle down. But no, the flight is not exclusive to your pet. And yes, there could be other pets on the same aircraft, But I don't think it should be a major concern to you. If a pet is particularly agitated, if it's causing trouble on an aircraft at the time of loading, the airline up to the last minute still have the ability to refuse that pet.
I see.
So an animal that's not behaving in the correct manner could, right up to the last minute, can be taken back from the flight. Ultimately, the loader and actually the captain of the aircraft has the decision. So if the loader of the aircraft has a doubt he'll call the captain or his assistant, his vice captain, and ask him to double check it, and they'll make a decision. Again, it's not something that happens too often, but it's something that we just need to be aware of.
I see. Because now what you are telling me actually answer a bunch of other questions I have, because I've been collecting questions from people, and a bunch of questions is about I have a Chihuahua. What if my Chihuahua is very freaked out? And I have 3 cats. What if they are very freaked out? I have 2 dogs. What if they are very freaked out? Basically, freaked out is you see a pattern. Freaked out is the top 1 questions. Yeah, so you seem to explain that it's not very often.
I just explain it a bit more. If your pet is freaked out, this is an issue that you should address long before you go to ship it from one side of the world to the other. You can't bring a freaked out pet to Dublin Airport and think that over the next 24 hours, somebody in the airline is going to all of a sudden transform your pet into a completely different type of creature. So you have to know your pet, and most people will know their pet well. And I'll go back to the point of having the crate in advance, that you can put it into the crate, see what reaction you get. And the reaction you get on the first day might be different to the reaction you get on the 4th or 5th day. The onus is on you to bring your pet to the airport, in good health and in good condition, hopefully accustomed to the crate, and any other health issues that it might have, you would have made known to the pet chipper or pet relocation company in advance, and we can advise you on that. But generally speaking, if you have a pet that's freaked out, most airlines will refuse them. Within reason, they will refuse them because they see it as a risk, and they don't want to take that risk onto their aircraft, which also contains maybe 200 or 300 passengers as well. So they don't want to have to divert somewhere because of pets. So the onus is on you to make sure that your pet's good health. If you feel it's the type of pet that maybe could get agitated in this situation, and you haven't been in the situation before, consult your vet, consult a pet specialist or a cat specialist like yourself, Alice. Let them, have a good look at your pet. They may recommend something for your pet, some kind of medication or some kind of aid that might help. Now, what you can't do is sedate your pet in any way, and you can't use any form of sedative. It's illegal to do it. It's not advisable to do it, and an airline shouldn't accept your pet if it's sedated in any way. But there's a number of other products on the market. You probably know some of them. You've got things like Calm Aid. Some people use natural products like Rescue Remedy. They put it on the bedding. Sometimes they put it in their water. So the longer you give yourself to organize this, the more times you can trial these different things and see what works best for your pet. And come your departure day, you should have solved most of those problems yourself.
Okay, so we have a theme in this conversation. The theme is prepare yourselves early.
Absolutely. Earlier the better. It gives you time to, particularly if you think you have a stressful type of pet, you got to work on that stress and make a plan in your head. I'm going in 2 months' time, and I'm going to have my pet in a better frame of mind, in a better state, used to his crate, in good health by the time it's flight. Give your pet every chance to have the quietest possible journey it can have.
Right. So for people specifically coming from Hong Kong, they need to do they need to have the pet passport done?
You can have a pet passport done. Pet passports, EU pet passports, are really used for pets that are going from one EU country to another.
Oh, I see.
Sometimes they're used for pets. Sometimes people will apply in advance for a pet passport and have it when they come in. But there's another document you can use instead of that, which is the annex document that I referred to earlier on. It's not a necessity that you have a pet passport. It's helpful if you do, but you don't have to have it. You can just use the annex form, which is common in all international countries. There'll be a format for this form that you use. I don't actually have one here in me at this moment in time, but your vets will be familiar with it. Most vets will be familiar with annex forms for international travel for pets. So you don't necessarily need to have a pet passport.
Okay, great. So I think I have asked all the questions now. So thank you very much for talking to us today. I hope that will clear a lot of confusions of pet owners who are traveling internationally. Yep. And I will put your contact details on the description box under this video. Yep. So if people have any questions, of course, you are very delighted to answer them.
Yeah, not really. Just to say that most people working in our type of business, you know, we're responsible. We feel responsible. Your pet is important to us as it is to you. We want your pet to travel well. We want your pet to arrive safe. We want your pet to arrive on time. So we give that our very best to make sure that that happens. And I hope that reassures people to some degree. You'll always have operators in any walk of life that maybe don't do the job as good as they could. But this is live animals. To us, it's exactly the same as a person, and we will treat it the same. And give your pet the best attention that we possibly can in the course of this journey.
Great. That's very reassuring to hear that. So thank you very much.
That's all. Very nice to speak to you again, Alice. And happy to be of help to you or any of your clients going forward in the future. If they've got questions, just pass on my email address. We will always get an answer back to them.
Great, great. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alice. Stay safe, stay well. Take care, and thank you.
I hope you find this video useful. If you like all things cats, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for future useful cat information. So that's it for today. See you next time. Bye.